began with an excess of alcohol. A night on the town, or to be precise, an evening in the suburbs. A few years ago, I was enjoying what you might term a pub crawl with 3 or 4 acquaintances of my youth through the streets of Camberwell and Peckham in South London, where I grew up. Revisiting bars, clubs and cafes where we had once wasted many a long night, we were, I suppose, hoping to rekindle the energy and exuberance of those heady teenage years, indulge in some heartwarming nostalgia, and rediscover a drinking capacity that had deserted most of us with age and the onset of good sense. We were not left disappointed. It had been a raucous, fun-filled, beer-fueled reliving of fond memories as we toured old haunts, those that still existed, laughing, joking, singing and downing pint after pint, recalling old friends and incidents best forgotten, entertaining strangers with our tall tales and puerile antics, and merrily reverting to the drunken rabble we had set out to celebrate, if not emulate. The booze took its toll. Middle-aged tearaways headed meekly home to bed, and by 1 or 2 in the morning I was somehow alone, my head spinning, and gradually realising that I no longer knew anyone, friend or family in London, I could call upon to put me up in this frightful state. It was cold, it was starting to rain, and I had no coat. As I turned my back on the closed-down railway station, my eye landed upon a street sign, Elm Grove, that struck a rather different chord from the many other streets I'd trodden that night. Elm Grove, St. James's Church, a long-forgotten aspect of my youth. My old parish church and me, their good Catholic boy, serving at the altar, attending the youth club, and going on church outings. Now I knew that in those far-off days the door of that church was never locked, day or night, in spite of the socially deprived, crime-ridden area it then served. Could it possibly be? I made my way up the street, staggering a little to the front of the modest brick building, and quietly tried the door handle. Yes! Whether by accident or design, the door had been left unlocked, and tiptoeing inside, I found the church still dimly lit by way of a few near-depleted candles. I had warmth, light, a roof over my head, and a bench to rest on. But I was afraid of being discovered, ejected, perhaps handed over to the police. I needed somewhere to hide. And glancing round, yes, it was still there, that nice wooden double kiosk with the long curtains to shield the occupants of either section, and the sections separated by a grille. One side had a kneeler, the other, where I would spend the night, a reasonably cushioned chair, and the peace and quiet of the grave. My peace was disturbed at about 9 o'clock that morning by the hushed voice of an elderly lady the other side of the grille. "Bless me, Father, for I have sinned. It's been 6 weeks since my last confession." The position I found myself in was mind-boggling and terrifying to anyone with a vestige of Catholic indoctrination, concern for their immortal soul, or consideration for the privacy of their fellow beings. But my crisis of conscience clashed with the realisation that I was totally trapped, for a glance through the curtains now revealed a busy little gathering in the church, cleaners, flower arrangers, and a quietly kneeling row of would-be penitents. They'd seen my feet, luckily in shoes, not trainers, protruding beneath the curtain, and assumed that one of the various priests that served this parish was now sitting in his place waiting to hear the usual tales of woe. I was totally trapped. "And your sins?" I heard myself say, then listened patiently as a totally innocuous stream of minor failings ensued, the worst of which was to have listened to a whole episode of Mrs. Brown's Boys and laughed at the jokes with swear words in. 3 Hail Marys, I pronounced solemnly, and now make a good act of contrition while I absolve your sins. She left the confessional a happy woman, and her place was taken in turn by a middle-aged businessman, some deliberate tax evasion here, then a small boy who it seemed could now reach the top row of magazines at the newsagent. Sinner followed sinner, and as my deception appeared to satisfy their needs, so my confidence grew, and my agony of self-reproach diminished. I convinced myself I was providing a useful service, that I was harming no one, that some good might even come of this madness. Then came a moment of blind panic as the curtain was pulled back a little and a very Irish-sounding lady stage whispered into the dark recess, "Is that you now, Father Marnie? We couldn't be sure if you'd be back in time for confessions, but here's some coffee to keep you going." Heart pounding, I muttered indistinct gratitude as I accepted the proffered mug, and a minute or two later was impressed to find it laced with something a little stronger than caffeine. A hair of the dog, I mused as I welcomed in the next parishioner. That morning I heard tales that would make murderers weep, harlots blush, and embezzlers sit up in admiration and envy. The ability to release the more harmless offenders from the crippling guilt of their petty wrongdoings was reward indeed for the terrors I had endured. My satisfaction only offset by the requirement to absolve cynical, self-seeking ne'er-do-wells I would happily have banished to the fires of hell myself. My only distraction was the constant fear of discovery and the near impossibility of escape. But when no one had entered the box for 5 minutes or so, I dared to peep out and found the church empty again. Confessions were over. I stepped out gingerly, made my way to the nearest exit, and, perhaps in a gesture of penance, but also appreciation of something far more lasting than the cosy bed and breakfast I would have given anything for 8 hours earlier, I put £10 in the offertory box and slipped out quietly into the back streets of Peckham. "Well, Father Dan," I chuckled to myself, "I reckon you missed your true vocation there."